The bench was cold enough to feel through 2 layers of clothing. Claire Merritt sat on it anyway. She had nowhere else to go, not because she was homeless, not because she had lost everything in the dramatic way people lose things in movies, but because she had lost something quieter and harder to explain. She had lost the version of herself that knew how to keep going. And when you lose that, even a warm apartment feels like a place that belongs to someone else. She was 34 years old. She had a degree from Columbia, a job she no longer went to, a phone full of unread messages, and hands that had been bare in the December. Cold for 40 minutes because she had left her gloves on the kitchen counter that morning and hadn't cared enough to go back for them. That was the part nobody understood about the kind of sadness Claire was carrying. It wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It just quietly removed your ability to care about small things. Gloves, meals, returned calls, until the small things piled up into something enormous that you couldn't see over anymore. Central Park in December at 11 in the morning was not empty, but it felt empty. Dog walkers moved through quickly, collars up, breath clouding. A jogger passed without looking at anything. 2 tourists photographed the bare trees with the focused urgency of people who needed to prove they had been somewhere. Nobody sat on benches. It was too cold for benches. But Claire sat, hands folded in her lap, fingers going from pink to white to something that felt distant and numb. And she watched the path in front of her and thought about nothing in a way that was somehow more exhausting than thinking about everything. She had been sitting there for almost an hour when the woman appeared. She came from the east path, walking with the particular ease of someone who knew exactly where they were going even when they didn't. She was maybe 60, lean and straight-backed, with silver hair cut short and close and a red wool coat that was clearly expensive, but worn like it wasn't. She had the face of a woman who had been through things and come out the other side, not unscathed but unbowed. Her eyes were a pale, clear gray, the kind of eyes that noticed things. She sat down on the far end of the bench. Not close, not invasive. Just there. The way people in New York sometimes share space without acknowledging it, which is its own kind of city language. Claire didn't look at her. She was used to sharing benches without connecting. That was fine. That was preferred. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The wind moved through the bare branches. A pigeon investigated something near the path. The city hummed its constant low note in the distance. Then Claire felt it. Not a sound, not a word. Just the particular sensation of being looked at. Not stared at. Looked at. There is a difference. Being stared at makes you want to disappear. Being looked at, truly looked at, makes something in your chest do something complicated. She turned slightly. The woman in the red coat was not staring. She was simply observing, the way a person observes weather, or a painting, or something they are trying to understand without disturbing. Her clear gray eyes moved from Claire's face to her hands and back, and in that movement was something that Claire could not immediately name. Claire looked away. Her fingers were genuinely numb now. She could feel the cold had moved from discomfort into something more serious, that particular aching numbness. That means the body is beginning to negotiate with the temperature. She didn't move to leave. She didn't rub her hands together. She just sat. The woman in the red coat sat for perhaps 10 more minutes. She didn't speak. She didn't offer anything. She didn't ask if Claire was okay in the way strangers sometimes ask that question as a formality, already walking away before the answer comes. Then she stood. Claire heard the movement and expected footsteps walking away. Instead, she heard the small, soft sound of something being set on the bench. Not placed in front of her, not handed over, just set down, on the wood between them, quietly, without ceremony, without drama. Then the footsteps did walk away. Claire turned. On the bench where the woman had been sitting were a pair of gloves. Dark gray cashmere, expensive, clearly not spares she had been carrying for someone who might need them. These were her gloves, the ones she had been wearing when she sat down. Claire looked up fast. The woman in the red coat was already 20 feet away, moving at the same steady, unhurried pace she had arrived with. She did not look back. She walked toward the east path, and then she was gone, absorbed into the gray December morning like she had never been there at all. Claire sat very still for a long moment. Then she picked up the gloves. They were warm, still warm from the woman's hands. And something about that, the residual warmth of a stranger's, hands in the palms of something, left behind for her, did what nothing had done in 4 months of silence and distance and sitting in rooms feeling like she was made of glass. It broke her open. Not violently, not with sobs that scared the pigeons, just quietly, the way ice breaks in early spring, a crack that runs the full length of something that has been frozen for a long time, and then the slow exhale of everything that had been held rigid underneath. Claire Merritt sat on a bench in Central Park in December with a stranger's warm gloves in her hands and cried in the particular way of someone who is needed to cry for a very long time and has finally, accidentally, been given permission. She didn't know the woman's name. She didn't know why she had sat down on that specific bench, or whether she had seen something in Claire that made her stay, or whether leaving the gloves had been an impulse or a decision. She didn't know if the woman had ever done anything like that before, or if she would ever do it again. What she knew was this: someone had looked at her hands. Someone had seen the cold. Someone had said nothing, asked nothing, required nothing, and had left something warm behind. That was all. And it was everything. She put the gloves on. She sat for another few minutes, hands now warm, face wet, breathing carefully, the way you breathe when you are trying to gather yourself without losing what the gathering has opened up. Then she stood. She walked. Not home, not yet. She walked through the park for a long time. No destination, just moving, which was more than she had genuinely done in weeks. She thought about the woman in the red coat. She thought about what it takes to sit next to a stranger and simply be present, without making it about yourself, to notice without intruding, to give without requiring gratitude or explanation or even acknowledgement, to just set something warm on a bench and walk away. She thought about how much courage that actually took, not the dramatic courage of running into burning buildings, the quieter, rarer courage of trusting that the gesture was enough, of not needing to see what it did. By the time Claire left the park, it was almost 1 in the afternoon. She was hungry, which surprised her. Hunger had been largely absent for months, another small thing that had quietly disappeared. She stopped at a deli on 72nd Street and ordered a sandwich, and ate it standing at the counter, and the man behind the counter said, "You good?" in the distracted way of deli countermen everywhere, and she said, "Yeah," getting there, and meant it for the first time in longer than she could measure. She went home. She opened her laptop for the first time in 9 days. Not to work, not yet, but to find the therapist's number she had been given 3 months ago and never called. She found it in an old email. She stared at it for a while. Then she called. The receptionist said the earliest appointment was January 4th. Claire said that was fine. She wrote the date on a piece of paper and put it on the kitchen counter next to the gloves she had left there that morning, her own gloves, still sitting where she had abandoned them. And she looked at both pairs of gloves side by side and felt something shift in her chest in a way that was unfamiliar and not unpleasant. She texted her sister, not a long text, just, "Hey, I'm still here. Can we talk this week?" Her sister, who had been waiting 4 months for any message at all, replied in 40 seconds, "Yes, God, yes. Tomorrow, I'll come to you." Claire put the phone down and stood in her kitchen in the gray December light and breathed. That night, she slept properly for the first time in weeks. Not the shallow, restless half-sleep of someone whose mind won't stop negotiating with itself. Real sleep, the kind that means something. She never found the woman in the red coat. She looked in the way you look for someone when you have no information except a face and a color and a direction. They walked. She went back to that bench 3 times in the following weeks. She described the woman to a park maintenance worker who said he saw a lot of people in red coats and couldn't help. She posted something vague on a neighborhood forum that got 12 responses, none of them right. The woman remained exactly what she had been on that bench, a stranger, complete and unknowable and gone. But here is what Claire Merritt did with what was left behind. She became a social worker, not immediately. It took 2 years of therapy and rebuilding and figuring out what she actually wanted her life to be for. But she became one. She works now in a crisis support center on the west side of Manhattan. And her particular gift, the thing her colleagues notice and cannot fully explain, is her ability to sit with people who are in the deepest part of their darkness without trying to pull them out before they're ready. She sits with them. She stays present. She doesn't fix or instruct or require anything. She just stays. And sometimes when she sees someone who is cold in a way that goes beyond weather, when she sees someone whose hands are bare in December, not because they forgot their gloves, but because they have stopped caring about small things, she does something. She doesn't make it a moment. She doesn't frame it or explain it. She just quietly, without ceremony, leaves something warm within reach. And then she walks away, because she learned something, on a bench in Central Park from a woman in a red coat whose name she never knew and whose face she still sees, sometimes when she closes her eyes. She learned that the most powerful thing one human being can do for another is not to rescue them. It is not to fix them or save them or ask them to explain what is broken. The most powerful thing you can do is to simply prove, without words, without conditions, without needing anything back, that you saw them, that their cold hands in December were worth noticing, that they were worth the warmth. On Claire Merritt's desk at the crisis center there is a small wooden box. Inside it are two things: a folded piece of paper with a therapist's number she called on a December afternoon, and a pair of dark gray cashmere gloves, worn soft at the fingers now, that belonged to a woman whose name she never learned. She has never worn them again. She keeps them because some things are not meant to be used. Some things are meant to be remembered, not for what they were: gloves, warmth, a small practical thing left on a cold bench, but for what they proved on a morning when proof was the only thing that could have mattered. That someone looked, that someone saw, that someone, without knowing her name or her story or how far down she had gone, decided that she was worth stopping for. And sometimes, on the hard days, the days when the work is heavy and the darkness in the room is thick, and she wonders if any of it is enough, Claire opens that small wooden box and puts her hand on the soft gray cashmere and remembers what it felt like to be seen by a stranger on a cold bench in December. And then she goes back in, every single time. She goes back in,